Okay, let's unpack this. When we think about World War II resistance,
Yeah.
uh, certain things always come to mind, right?
Right. The French Maquis, Soviet partisans.
Exactly. Allied spies, daring escapes. Those stories are, well, they're fundamental, absolutely crucial to how we understand the war.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this whole other layer, isn't there? A really remarkable chapter of resistance that, honestly, you rarely hear about in the usual histories. So today, our mission here at the Deep Dive is to try and bring some of that hidden history into the light. We're going to challenge maybe a few common perceptions along the way.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is just how narrow our historical focus can sometimes be. We're actually going to explore this extraordinary truth about Muslims in the Balkans. Not just isolated incidents, but, significant resistance against Nazi forces.
Right.
And maybe even more profoundly, these incredible acts of courage where many risked absolutely everything to shelter and save Jewish lives during the Holocaust.
It's just everything.
Yeah. And like I said, this isn't just one or two stories. It seems to have been a powerful pattern of human decency, of defiance, that for lots of reasons has just been largely skipped over in Western historical accounts. We'll be looking mainly at places like Bosnia, Albania, Kosovo.
Yeah.
That's where these stories really unfolded.
And for this deep dive, just so you know where we're coming from, we're drawing quite a bit from an article titled "The Balkan Muslims Who Resisted the Nazis and Saved Jewish Lives." It's from History Substack, and it leans heavily on Robert Satloff's really important 2006 book, Among the Righteous.
A really seminal work, yes.
It is, and it forces you to rethink things. It really does. So let's just jump right in. Maybe Albania is a good place to start, because that story is just, well, it's kind of astonishing.
It really is.
Before the war, you had maybe, 200 Jews in the whole country? Something like that.
Yeah, tiny number, yeah.
But then, by 1945, after the war, that number had ballooned to over 2,000. Many were refugees, obviously, fleeing from elsewhere in Europe. And here's the really incredible part, the kicker. Albania, a majority Muslim nation under occupation, refused to hand over a single Jew to the Nazis. Not one.
Not one. It's extraordinary.
How on earth did they manage that when so many other, often more powerful nations just couldn't or wouldn't?
It's really an incredible testament to this deeply ingrained cultural and ethical code they have called Besa.
Besa, okay.
Yeah, Besa. It's more than just a word. It's it's an Islamic and cultural principle, quite unique to Albanians. It means to keep one's word, but also, crucially, to protect the guest.
Protect the guest.
An unbreakable oath, essentially. So you had families taking in Jewish refugees, sometimes giving them Muslim names, teaching them Albanian, hiding them away in remote villages in the mountains.
Wow.
And even when the Gestapo came knocking, doing door-to-door searches, people they stayed silent. They upheld this principle.
That's complete silence.
It speaks to this really profound, deep-seated sense of honor, of responsibility that, it simply overrode the immense fear of what the Nazis might do.
That's just remarkable. The power of a cultural principle acting as a shield like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only about sort of quiet protection, hiding people away, was it? In other places like Kosovo and Bosnia, we also see examples of, more public, more vocal resistance.
Absolutely.
The Nazi-aligned governments there were apparently pressuring local imams, their spiritual leaders, to actually support deportation policies against Jews. What happened then?
Well, many just flat out refused. They wouldn't do it.
That's refused.
Yeah. In Sarajevo, for instance, there was Imam Hafiz Suleiman Zvizdic. He very bravely used his pulpit, his platform, to warn people explicitly that no Muslims should cooperate with the Nazis or harm Jews.
Imagine the courage that took in that environment.
Absolutely. And other Muslim leaders, they didn't just speak out individually, they actually organized. They signed petitions, they published letters protesting the policies. They even wrote directly to German commanders condemning violence against civilians. There's this powerful record from 1941 where Muslim leaders in Bosnia sent a direct letter to Hitler himself.
To Hitler.
Condemning the atrocities being committed by the Ustasha. Those were the Croatian fascists, and explicitly asking for protection for all innocent people, Jews included.
Wow.
So this wasn't just, scattered acts of kindness. It was an organized public stand from really influential community figures right against the persecution.
That is astounding. To directly challenge Hitler, knowing the risks, it's hard to fathom. And it wasn't only religious leaders taking a stand either. We also see active military resistance, right?
Very much so.
Thousands of Bosnian Muslims apparently joined the Yugoslav partisans. That was the communist-led movement fighting the Nazis and their collaborators. What sort of impact did they have?
Well, these partisan units were actually highly effective. They caused a lot of disruption for the Nazi war machine. They were involved in sabotaging trains, supply lines, fighting in guerrilla units, often hidden deep in the forests and mountains.
Classic partisan tactics.
Exactly. And they played a really crucial role later in liberating major cities like Mostar and Sarajevo. And what's particularly significant here, I think, is that some of these units were made up entirely of Muslims.
Right.
Their fight wasn't just, for their own survival or even just for their own community. They were fighting for a broader vision, a multi-ethnic Yugoslavia, free from fascism. It really demonstrates a much broader perspective, a broader vision for their society than maybe many histories give them credit for.
It's so easy, isn't it, to just generalize about any group of people, especially during wartime. Robert Satloff, the historian whose book we mentioned, he actually traveled through the Balkans and North Africa, didn't he? Collecting these stories firsthand.
Yes, he did extensive field work.
Talking to Jewish survivors, their descendants. What was it about those testimonies that really stood out? Either to him or to you in reading about his findings?
Well, he unearthed some just deeply moving accounts. And honestly, quite humbling testimonies. You have one Jewish survivor recounting, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, they gave us their beds and they took the floor. They told us it was their duty as Muslims.
Wow.
Another person spoke of a Muslim mayor in Kosovo who bravely ordered false documents to be made for Jews and just flat out refused Nazi demands to hand people over.
Just refused.
What really stands out, I think, is that these weren't, grand politicians making speeches on a world stage or high-ranking generals. These were often regular people, villagers, local officials, ordinary families.
Just ordinary people.
Who simply understood the fundamental difference between right and wrong. And they chose to act on it, often, as we said, at immense personal risk.
And it wasn't just private homes or, local mayors offering sanctuary.
Yeah.
There's also that powerful story involving a mosque itself.
Yes, that's right. In Albania, near a town called Kruji, a mosque actually provided shelter for several Jewish families.
Inside the mosque.
Inside the mosque. And when the Gestapo showed up, the imam calmly told them that the people staying there were just traveling Sufi scholars.
And they bought it.
Apparently.
Yeah.
These soldiers, maybe they were convinced by the imam's confidence, or maybe they were just reluctant to, violate a religious site. Whatever the reason, they left without searching.
Incredible.
So this mosque became a sanctuary, just like, a hidden attic or a secret basement might have been somewhere else in Europe. But here, it was under the minaret, a really profound symbolic act of protection, deeply rooted in their faith and that moral code we talked about.
Given all these incredible stories, the courage, the ingenuity, the collective resistance, why? Why has this specific part of World War II history been so erased almost from our mainstream narratives? It feels like such a crucial piece of the puzzle.
Well, if you sort of step back and look at the bigger picture, the broader significance, it becomes a bit clearer, though no less unfortunate. After World War II, you had the whole geopolitical landscape shift dramatically, right? The Cold War kicked in.
Yeah, the Iron Curtain falls.
Exactly. And the historical spotlight in the West, it largely fell on, Christian resistance heroes or the Soviet Union's role. The Islamic world, meanwhile, was often viewed through a very different lens, maybe oil, conflict, or later, extremism.
Different narratives taking hold.
Very different narratives. And even when the Holocaust itself was remembered and studied, the significant role played by Muslim rescuers, Muslim resistors, it was rarely, if ever, included in that story. And then, compounding that tragedy, many of these same regions, Bosnia, Kosovo, became associated in the public mind with terrible conflict and war crimes in the 1990s.
Yeah, that definitely overshadowed things.
Tragically, yes. It overshadowed these earlier histories of resistance and, frankly, profound humanity during World War II. It's a sort of complex, multi-layered historical amnesia, really.
It's also crucial to remember, isn't it, that Muslims themselves were also victims of fascist terror during this period. It wasn't like they were somehow insulated from the suffering.
Oh, absolutely not. That's a critical point. The Ustaša regime in Croatia, for example, they didn't just target Jews. They also brutally targeted Muslims and Orthodox Serbs.
Right.
Tens of thousands of Muslims were murdered in mass executions. Entire villages were wiped out. Families deported to concentration camps like Jasenovac.
So they were facing their own existential threat.
Precisely. They were victims of immense suffering, facing dire threats themselves. And yet, despite that, many still chose to extend help, to offer protection to others who were also being persecuted. It really just highlights the depth of their conviction, their capacity for compassion, even under the absolute most extreme circumstances imaginable.
So as we kind of bring this deep dive toward a close, what really stands out is that profound choice these individuals made. They clearly weren't acting for fame, definitely weren't expecting rewards. They resisted in so many ways, with weapons, yes, but also with forged names, with locked doors, and just with that brave, unwavering silence.
And what this truly reveals, I think, is how these deep-seated values, whether they're rooted in religious faith or in culture like Besa, or maybe just a fundamental personal sense of right and wrong, how those values can translate into extraordinary ethical action, even when fear is absolutely pervasive.
Yeah.
These stories, they really challenge our preconceptions, don't they, about who resisted the Nazis and why they resisted, and even what forms that resistance could actually take. It's just such a powerful reminder that history is rarely as simple or as clear-cut as it often appears in the broad strokes we usually get. Understanding these nuances, these complexities, that's what makes knowledge really come alive, makes it valuable.
And you're right, you probably won't find these specific stories in most standard textbooks. Maybe a footnote, if you're lucky.
Unlikely, yeah.
But there, in the forests of Bosnia, in the villages of Albania, these people did what so many others, in arguably less dangerous positions, wouldn't or couldn't do. They just said no. So what's the enduring message here? What should we really take away from these crucial yet largely forgotten chapters of history?
Well, I think
Maybe it's that we should always be asking, what other vital stories, what other narratives shaped by personal conviction, by this kind of surprising cross-cultural solidarity? What else might still be out there waiting to be fully understood, waiting to be shared?
exactly, because sometimes the most important lessons, the most profound insights, are hidden in the places we least expect to look.